Greetings, everybody. It is time. Friday night, a little fantasy football chat for you from the Football Diehards. I'm Bob Harris, senior editor here at footballdiehards.com. Joined, as always, by Emil Show, head coach of the entire organization, and an avid, lifelong fantasy football. How long have you been playing, Emil?
1981. Whatever that is.
I was 86.
39th year.
About a thousand years of fantasy football experience between us. I think that's safe to say. Who was the first player you drafted?
Dan Fouts, 1981.
A good pick, I'm guessing.
He was good. He was one of the more productive quarterbacks back then.
Yeah, it's fun looking back on some of that. I'm going to read.
How about you? Who'd you pick on your first?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was Dan Marino. I actually saw recently with the passing of my colleague Brian Francisco, with whom I started my side of the business with before we got together. At his funeral, they had a whole collection of his notes and papers.
Oh my gosh!
That he had kept over. Brian did everything we did, and he was an amazing ranker, won numerous awards, prizes, contests, and whatnot. But he did everything on paper. And so they had the papers there, and I actually saw that first draft that we did.
Wow.
So very entertaining. And just looking at all his notes was it was pretty very nostalgic, sad passing, but it happens to all of us. I'm going to and see if we can get some questions.
Fantastic.
And we'll get started. A little bit of news to start the show. Josh Gordon waived by the New England Patriots earlier this week, or actually placed on IR earlier this week, waived today or yesterday, and then already picked up, claimed off waivers by the 28th team on the list. I don't know what that says, but the Seattle Seahawks, Josh Gordon is now a Seattle Seahawk. A lot of excitement on my Twitter feed. People want to know. I've had a high stakes player ask me how much of a $1,000 fab would I spend on Josh Gordon. Let me get your opinion, Emil. What do you think of Josh Gordon in Seattle?
I don't think he's, I think he's not going to do much. I don't think he's worth picking up unless you just want to pick him up just to see what happens for a week, and therefore I don't think you'd want to spend much of your fab budget on him personally.
So we have a tendency as fantasy football owners to chase points, right? We're still chasing that 2013, remarkable as it was for Josh Gordon, but a lot of time and issues have gone between him. I think it was interesting today, or I think it was this morning, Tom Curran of NBC Sports suggested the Patriots were moving on because they felt he wasn't all in, questioned his work habits. He was maybe late for some meetings, and they just got a little bit tired of it. Because why? Not because they haven't supported him all along, but at some point the production has to be worth it. The squeeze got to be worth the juice. And I think in his case, it was 6 games, 20 catches. And I think that's maybe what he is now. It's possible you catch lightning in a bottle, and if you're that kind of aggressive fantasy player, feel free to jump in on that. And he goes into Seattle as the wide receiver 3. I don't think he moves ahead of DK Metcalf. I think he's a nice complementary piece maybe there, though. They have a shortage of tight ends. They may bring Ed Dixon off IR. Sounds like he'll be a game-time decision this week, so watch for that. But they don't have a tight end, so they could use another receiving body. But boy, DK Metcalf very effective in the red zone, getting tons of end zone targets. I think 13 end zone targets to date this year, and starting to convert some of them. So I'm not really sure, that I would expect a big role. I think part of this is that Russell Wilson wanted him there. And so when he was available, they went ahead and made Russell Wilson happy. I'm all about making Russell Wilson happy.
Well, and also you pointed out that what did it cost? What did it cost Seattle to pick this guy up? Not much.
Right. Cost them nothing. So they'll pick up his salary or whatever. But I guess in the end, I think our expectations, I think the lesson for me is, and we do this a lot, and I do the, look, if you're playing David Montgomery this week against the Philadelphia Eagles, you're to some degrees chasing points, right? So, I mean, it's what we do. I mean, and I get that, but I think it's easier to project, and I think my days of chasing Josh Gordon are over. So if you grab him out there and you have great success with him, congratulations to you. I hope you're not in my league. But the question that I saw, what do you think, like, you know, if you were going to spend a percentage, would it be maybe a 10% if you had $1,000? I mean, are you?
No, I'd probably spend, if I had $1,000 and I had room and I really had nobody else to pick up, $40, 4%.
Our friend Mike Valverde is on the Twitter asking us a question too, and I think it's a pretty interesting question about the expectations this week. If you check the main page of the website, we have a little more information on this. But Joe Flacco going on IR. So we get Brandon Allen making his NFL debut, his starting debut. We've seen him for brief glimpses in, I believe it was in Jacksonville. He had a good preseason, you know, playing against the UPS workers now and whatnot. And no, all due respect to UPS workers, they're not playing football was my point. But he goes into a situation this week going against the Cleveland Browns. He has Cortland Sutton's been playing extremely well. I think what's so interesting to me about Denver is despite their offensive woes, you look at the rankings for Phillip Lindsay, Royce Freeman, Cortland Sutton, and before he left, you know, Emmanuel Sanders, and they were pretty highly ranked for a kind of a lackluster offense. So how fast are you running from the likes of Cortland Sutton? I put a lot in on Deshawn Hamilton last week. Lesson learned. There's a thing called Fred Brown, and apparently he's more important to the Broncos than my guy Deshawn Hampton. Actually, I'll talk about that a little more in a minute.
Yeah, okay, so Brandon Allen's a rookie, right?
Well, he's first-time starter.
First-time starter. He's been around a little. Okay. I don't know. I would probably, personally, I would try and not start Sutton if I could get away with it for 1 week. Right. Now, you know, sometimes you can't get away with doing that, but that's what I would try to do. If I had some other guys I could start, I'd give it a week to see what happens. Sounds chicken, but you got a guy who hasn't started in his career. I think that's just adding risk.
An increasingly healthy Cleveland secondary. I think what I would be trying to do in this case is leverage, you know, the rushers, the ball carriers. So if I had Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman, who is playing really well of late, I think he's catching the ball a little more. So maybe those outlets out of the backfield are useful for a young quarterback. Maybe the tight end is. Noah Fant would have to catch the passes thrown his way as opposed to dropping them. But to get on Deshawn Hamilton a little bit, talked to Andrew Mason, local observer there in Denver, beat writer for a variety of outlets, and asked him about Deshawn Hamilton because I was kind of all in last week, assuming that with, you know, Emmanuel Sanders moving on, and boy, Emmanuel Sanders, way to go.
Wow, what a game, yeah.
But, you know, wondering what happened to Deshawn Hamilton last week. Fred Brown got the start. Deontay Spencer, I believe, we got some playing time. Tim Patrick is coming off IR. He won't maybe play this week necessarily. But I asked Andrew, what is Deshawn Hamilton? Is he an NFL wide receiver too? He said he may be that, but maybe more likely he's that wide receiver 3, that slot guy, and we'll see maybe Tim Patrick comes back and takes on a more commanding role alongside Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton, a true wide receiver 1, but until we see what the quarterback play is, I'm maybe laying off a little bit.
Yeah, we got a couple questions here, by the way, if you want to hit them
out there.
All right, first one. Speaking of moving on, as we've been talking about, should I trade Zach Ertz? I have Mark Andrews on my roster also, who Baltimore's already had their bye too. So would you try and trade Ertz for some value at another position?
I would, but I would like to see if he could have a big game before I do that. I mean, it's, you know.
May take that to get a good value.
Right? You're kind of selling low if you're selling right now. Dallas Goedert cutting into the workord pretty noticeably.
Unless you got a guy who loves Ertz, but you got to hope he has a big game, and then you can push him. But I'd try and do it if you could do it.
Yeah, Doug Farrar, USA Today, wrote the other day that, you know, basically Dallas Goedert is now his co-worker, he is the co-pilot at tight end, and it's true. It's kind of developing that way. I'd like to see the Eagles' offense get a little better. Maybe Deshaun Jackson coming back this week would help. He's listed as questionable today, coming off the injury that's sidelined him since week 2 in an abdominal injury, so they hope to have him back this week. I would try to sell Ertz if I could get anything of value, and I might want to wait through this weekend and see if we can get a good game out of him. It's not a horrible matchup for him going up against the Bears this week. So I might try and do that. But right, you're going to play Mark Andrews every single week. What else?
So we got two more here. Well, kind of one and a half. PPR flex: Robbie Anderson or Mark Ingram.
Boy, the first law of flexology, as I have created, is always the feature back over the wide receiver. But there are times when you can break the law, right? I mean, look, Sam Darnold's not playing well. That's the concern. So you've got one of the easiest matchups going in the NFL, the Jets against Miami. You've got one of the toughest matchups in the NFL, the toughest matchup in the NFL. A Patriots defense that's given up, 2 touchdowns all year, I think?
Yeah.
So, look, I wouldn't blame you for going Robbie Anderson. I would consider it, and I would probably consider breaking the law of flexology. There are other weapons in that passing attack. I think, don't overlook, obviously, Jamison Crowder. Also, don't overlook Demaryius Thomas, who has a ton of targets over the last 2 weeks. Maybe got them heavily in one game, but still, there's some mouths to feed there. Maybe they get Le'Veon Bell more involved this week. So those are things taken into consideration. But given all that, just based on the matchups, I might lean Anderson in this one. I'm guessing that since this is a flex, you've got a pretty solid lineup ahead of him. So one way to split this might be, do I need a solid floor or am I swinging for the fence? I think a Robbie Anderson may be a guy that gives you a little bit of a swing for the fence situation going, because Xavier Howard, the cornerback, is placed on IR. So maybe he's both the floor and the ceiling as I talk myself into it. All right, look, anytime you play the Patriots defense, probably good idea.
Okay, we got a Waz NFL 1, WAZ NFL 1, that disagreed with me. He thinks that it's riskier to bench Sutton this week than to start him. So I got somebody who has an opposing view there.
All right.
And that's all I got so far on questions.
I look, I get it. Sutton has been like a top 15 wide receiver to date. I just don't know what I expect with a new quarterback. Mm-hmm. And some of this is going to depend. Do you have viable options? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I mean, you probably didn't spend a whole lot on Sutton, in terms of draft capital. It was probably a mid-range kind of draft pick. So he's clearly outperforming that. So you may have other guys on your roster who are maybe have a little more upside, or maybe you have a better matchup this week. Maybe you have one of the Jacksonville wide receivers. Maybe you have Chris Conley languishing at the bottom of your bench, and D.D. Westbrook is out. And you're going against the Houston defense that has no J.J. Watt and is down 3 cornerbacks. So
wow,
there are circumstances.
Yeah, and Houston hasn't been stopping many people. I got another question here. Gurley owner. I have Latavius Murray. Would you drop him, meaning, I assuming Gurley, for Darrell Henderson standard league?
They drop Murray for Henderson because they want to handcuff for Gurley.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I suppose that's doable as we head towards the playoffs. You want to start insuring your top players. Seems like Alvin Kamara will be back after the bye. That seems like a safe assumption. So, I don't think it's the worst move ever.
Maybe you could trade Latavius for something before.
That would be more ideal, and I would try that before I drop them. But you're still going to need to get Darrell Henderson on your roster. Maybe you have a movable piece at the bottom of your bench, a second kicker, a defense, a second tight end, or something you can live without until you get it figured out. But that might be a better approach.
Yeah. That's it for now on questions here.
All right, a couple of more news stories before we get back to questions, because I think there's a couple good ones. Pat Mahomes is listed as questionable this week. Last week, this time, he had been ruled out. So clearly making progress. I don't think he'll play this week, but we'll see. T.Y. Hilton will miss 3 to 4 weeks, it says, with a calf injury. That was according to head coach Frank Reich. So we have Zach Pascal, Chester Rogers, maybe Paris Campbell is the top 3 there. They're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. Any interest in any of those guys? Maybe worth making a roster move to acquire any of the outliers there, or are you going to focus on the other offenses?
Well, 3 to 4 weeks is a long time right now. And Pascal had an incredible game 2 weeks ago. As a matter of fact, I'll throw a stat up real quick. Against Houston, speaking of Houston, he had, 6 catches on 7 targets, 106, 2 touchdowns, and a receiving touchdown. Yeah. And but not last week against Denver, he had 1 catch out of 2 targets and 5 yards. So, but those are week to week.
Yeah. mean, I think Pascal and Rogers are the two guys who moved to the forefront in terms of wideouts. We've seen this offense go tight end heavy in the past. Would it surprise you if, Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle were the top receiving options?
Yeah,
any given
matter of fact, exactly, because if you noticed on those charts, Doyle has been moving up, and especially if that he's done pretty well. So you're right, maybe those guys are getting it, but I think Pasquale's, if you got some room on the roster to put that guy in, he may be a guy that you want to try and see for a week and see what happens. Unless you're desperate, then you may have to start him.
I would agree with that. I think that's the case. James Conner listed as doubtful, all but officially ruled out in that case. Benny Snell out 2 to 3 weeks, certainly out this week, but the reporting is he'll be out 2 to 3 weeks at a meniscus cleanup. That leaves Jalen Samuels with a clear path to workload. It's not the best matchup this week, but are you comfortable just playing that workload, Emil?
I'd be tempted. I think that's a great opportunity. Obviously a tough matchup, but yeah, I'd be tempted to put him in. He catches the ball and he runs the ball and he sometimes plays quarterback. So I think he's an excellent play.
Point. Gives you a little bit of a bonus as a receiver. Not that James Conner can't catch, but I mean, I think that's part of what Samuel is all about. And Trey Edmonds, the only other running back on the roster, so it seems like pretty comfortable workload going in, even if it's not the best of matchups. Devontae Adams.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I'd have another question. Yeah. What do you see about Mark Walton's value moving forward? Is he anything other than a roster stash?
He is a roster stash for now. This week, look, if you go to my DFS 3 and out, my tournament column, Mark Walton's there. Look, it's a volume play. The Jets have no linebackers left. They just traded Leonard Williams. The Dolphins are improving. I know nobody wants to hear this, so that's why I say it every chance I get. If you look at since Ryan Fitzpatrick came back, week 5, they had 2 offensive touchdowns up to that point when he came back into the game. In the 9 quarters since then, they've scored 49 points. They're improving. They played the same offensive line for 2 weeks in a row. I don't want to get into, I don't want to overstate my case here. So I'm just going to say, yes, worth a stash. Any running back who's getting a full workload, to me, is worth a stash. Even the worst offenses generate some production, and you may find yourself in a position. We know how attrition is. What we also know in fantasy football is every year a running back who you didn't draft is going to win somebody a title. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it's Mark Walton. I don't think it will be. But I do think he's a viable workload guy. Obviously, they're moving on from Kalen Ballage. He'll still maybe figure in. And maybe he's a little bit of a goal line vulture. But it seems to me Walton is the guy that they've been honing in on. He's the reason the Kenyon Drake has gone. That and they're moving forward because they are tanking a little bit. But still improving. They may win a game if they're not careful, and maybe against their former coach this week.
Well, yeah, you made an excellent point there. If you want to catch a fish, you got to have the pole in the water, and sometimes you got to get a guy on a roster for a week and see what happens. Yeah, and and if it doesn't work, you dump him and you move on.
I think we forget it how nice it is. We will sit here and we'll play the Darrell Hendersons of the world. We'll play Look, and I'm not saying they can't be productive and give you points, but if you have the first guy in line, I always want the first guy in line. I'm greedy like that. I wanted to mention Devontae Adams has a chance to come back this week against the Los Angeles Chargers in Green Bay's second home in Los Angeles. So it looks like the Packers, there will maybe be more Packers fans in the crowd than there will be Chargers fans. Chargers are struggling. Changed their offensive coordinator this week. It just hasn't been going well. Hopefully they can get on track, but the offensive line issues, Russell Okung's return should help that. But they really need to get off the snide on offense. Meanwhile, Green Bay is dialed in. Aaron Rodgers looking as good as he's ever looked to me. The last, 5 games, even without Devontae Adams. Would you be comfortable playing Adams if he's active this week? Keeping in mind it's a late afternoon kickoff. He is listed as questionable. If you're out there playing at home, you might want to have a fallback option just in case. But let's say all those circumstances come to pass. Would you be comfortable playing him his first game back?
Yes, I would. He's just too good. If they're putting him on the field, he's probably ready. And how long have we waited for this guy to get back in the game? It's week 9. I guess you could sit him. I would start him. I would just play him.
Right. And so, what's the difference then between playing a Sutton and playing a Devontae Adams. It's pretty easy. It's Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, it's the difference between Brandon Allen and Aaron Rodgers. It's not that I don't trust Cortland Sutton questioners. It's that I don't know what Brandon Allen is. I have zero ideas.
Sure.
I know he's good in brief. I know that Blake Bortles beat him out to be the backup in Los Angeles for the Rams. So there we have that.
Ouch.
And there was a time a few preseasons back where people thought Brandon Allen should be the starter in Jacksonville. Had a really good run in some preseason exhibition play, but really against limited producers. So that's where I'm going with that. I mean, when we weigh out our options, there are factors that weigh in that, maybe are outside the actual player himself. Circumstances have to be considered. Adam Thielen, listed as questionable. Looks like he'll be back this time against the Chiefs. We mentioned Patrick Mahomes has a chance to return. I don't think he will. I don't think his absence or Matt Moore playing necessarily precludes the Chiefs from racking up some offense. I thought he played reasonably well, Matt Moore, in that first game. But does this seem to you like a Dalvin Cook kind of game for the Minnesota Vikings, whether Thielen plays or not?
Yes, I do. And they're really relying on him. He's producing. It's incredible how well he's been playing, how he's staying healthy. But they'll still mix it up. Thielen doesn't take much to have a big game. He could catch 3 balls for 60 yards and a touchdown, and bing bong, you got 12 plus points, and you're feeling good about it. But yeah, I'd still start Thielen if he's a guy who's one of my obviously he's probably one of your better players, and you want to get him out there. So
right, early Sunday kickoff, early afternoon kickoff, so that helps us out a little bit in that regard. I'm getting a few questions here. Let me fire off two of the questions I've gotten here, Emil, if you don't mind.
Yeah, fire away. I got. I think I may have another, or is it just comments? We got some comments, not. Yeah, fire away with your question.
The dismissal misfired. Sad. Panthers or Steelers defense? I think that's kind of an interesting one. I like to pick on quarterbacks. Do we not feel like Ryan Tannehill is I don't know. I may be being too cruel with this. Ryan Tannehill's had a couple good showings. Is this the week that he turns back into a pumpkin? Maybe just for a week. Maybe he can, sustain some good play over the course of the rest of the season, but can he do it week to week? Would you like to pick on him with the Panthers defense or pick on the Colts offense with the Steelers defense?
I would like to pick on with the Panthers. I think it's. I mean, I'm glad that he's doing well as a quarterback. Had a nice week last week, but yeah, I'd go with the Panthers defense. See if they can mess that guy up a little bit.
As would I. Need one flex: David Montgomery, Michael Gallup, Dede Westbrook, or Tyrell Williams for the Raiders.
Wow. How well is Williams now? Is he really healthy?
Williams is off the injury report, so ready to go. Has scored a touchdown every game. It's the Detroit Lions. Darius Slay is listed as questionable in this one, so may or may not have him. This seems like it has the fixings for a shootout, right? I mean, Detroit.
Seems like all Detroit games are shootouts. I'd be tempted to go with Tyrell Williams off the top of my head.
So I would say this, and I like the matchup for Michael Gallup as well. I love what they did with David Montgomery last week, right? I mean, Matt Nagy told us he wasn't an idiot, and he went out and proved it by giving David Montgomery 27 touches. Yeah. And Montgomery responded. That was not against the Philadelphia run defense, though, which is much tougher. So, again, I may be going to split this one up a little bit, but if you're looking for a solid floor, and you trust Matt Nagy to continue what he was doing, then I get playing David Montgomery. I'm probably with you and some of this maybe depend on how the rest of your lineup is set up, where the risk is. But I'd probably go with Williams as well in this one, and I wouldn't talk you out of Gallup if you wanted to. The running back always for floor, I think, is a reasonable approach. It's one I take often. But in this case, I'm not sure I have the trust in the Bears that maybe I should, or maybe
Montgomery before last week. Montgomery had some pretty low floors, although being a rookie. Yeah. I got 2 more questions if you're done with yours yet.
Yeah.
All right, Kirk Cousin or Derek Carr. He's worried.
I do like Derek Carr. I do like Derek Carr this week. I think it's close. I think our rankings, they're one apart they're ranked consecutively. I think we have Carr at 11 and we have Cousins at 16, or Cousins at 12.
12,
so
yeah.
11 and 12. Mm-hmm. I like Carr there. I probably would go with him again, expecting a shootout. Got some good weapons around him. The issue for Cousins, I don't think it's necessarily not having a big game because he's had, about 4 in a row?
Yeah.
I mean, he's been pretty impressive. But I feel like this is more of a Dalvin Cook game. That doesn't mean Kirk Cousins can't be involved in that either. But at this point, again, we ranked them 11 and 12 this week, both quarterback ones. So I don't know that there's a wrong answer here. That's the order we have.
I'd be tempted to go with Carr myself. I actually picked Carr up in like 3 leagues last week because I was hurting on a bye and injuries, etc. It was well worth it. And this is, like you said, it's against Detroit in Oakland. And obviously, I don't want to run away from the Minnesota quarterback, but I think he's Carr is a good play here.
Couple much like Matt Stafford. Carr has completed multiple touchdown passes of 4 of the last 5 games. He leads the NFL in completion percentage. So he's not only just playing it safe this year, which we saw last year, but he's also being productive while playing it safe. And some of that is his weapons. Tyrell Williams has been coming through, and as has Darren Waller.
Waller is making it tough. They're having to double team that guy, and that just helps Tyrell Williams. It helps the quarterback. So.
Right, and one other note there, our colleague Al Zeidenfeld at ESPN pointed out that Carr is really good, top 5 in play action. So the presence of Josh Jacobs is helping him out there. So
good. I got another.
We're splitting hairs here because they're 12, but go ahead.
I got one more question here. Standard League 1 sits: Hill, Gallup, Golladay, Tyrell Williams. Got to sit one of those guys.
So Gallup is going to sit.
Yeah, I probably sit Gallup.
Tyreek Hill.
I assume it is too. Yeah. So I would probably sit Gallup.
Look, that's 4 great options.
Yeah, that's a nice lineup. That's all I have for right now.
All right, let's get into it. There's a couple little other little newsy items I thought we could get into before we call it a night and see if we have any more questions. I might have some more on the Twitter. Yeah. Wanted to touch base on the benching of Andy Dalton. We have a couple of things that are coming back with teams coming off buys. Number 1, Alvin Kamara should be fine. Rejoining Drew Brees and a great offense. Going against the Atlanta Falcons. We'll see if Dan Quinn is still the coach, but otherwise, keep in mind the Falcons defense is horrible. But Andy Dalton was benched. Ryan Finley will get the start there. A.J. Green coming back. It's been a horrible offense, Emil. Joe Mixon struggled. When he scores, I think it's been twice. It's both been passes, little swing passes. It's kind of a tough situation. How much worse does Ryan Finley taking over a quarterback make it for you? Even with A.J. Green coming back.
Wow, yeah, that's another tough one. You got a new quarterback coming in on a bad team. I wish I knew. I would be worried about it, again, just like the other one. I don't know anything about him. So it would worry me. Hopefully you've got some other solutions there because a lot of those players haven't been doing that well. So it worries me. What about you?
All right, so I have an interesting question here as we wrap up. Get any more questions in before we call it a night?
I got another question here, yep.
All right, I'm going to run this one by because I think this is a pretty good one here. A tough bye week, so should he start Terry McLaurin against the Buffalo Bills with Dwayne Haskins? Story I wanted to get to, so I got this question. Dwayne Haskins taking over as a starter with Case Keenum concussed and ruled out, or Marquise Brown. So we've got an offense that's not faring well, and McLaurin hasn't been as good in the last 3 games as he has. Has he gotten past 4 catches? I don't think he's hit 5 catches in recent weeks. And Brown coming off a 2-week absence, going against the New England Patriots. Here's the problem with this one. You've got Brown listed as questionable in a Sunday night kickoff, and you have McLaurin, is going to play. So I think for me, I'm going to go ahead. The Bills are a reasonably tough matchup. I'm worried about Dwayne Haskins, but I'm going to hold out a little hope that the college connection works somehow. I mean, look, you're right. This is one of the tougher decisions you're going to have.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I would go with the guy you know is going to play. It's because Brown has been questionable many a time and not played.
The last 2 games he's not played. John Harbaugh said today that he thinks he will play. Everything. So some of this is your own risk tolerance levels. Yeah. It's a pretty tough defense. This questioner thinks the pass defense, on Brown, but he feels like they'll stop the run and he'll run past Gilmore. I don't know. I think that's a little bit of a reach. I'm going to go McLaurin on this one.
Yeah, tough call, but I agree with you. I got one more here. Yeah. Let's take a look.
Go ahead.
Okay, 14-team league, Demaryius Thomas or Devontae Johnson for Pittsburgh. That's a PPR.
Deontay Johnson. Wow. So that's a great matchup. I want to check those targets. I had the number in my head.
Yeah,
I think I have it at my fingertips. It's been 27 targets over the last 4 games. He's averaged 4 catches per game. It's a pretty easy matchup. I don't know that I trust Sam Darnold all that much. I don't know that I trust Mason Rudolph that much. What has Deontay Johnson done with Mason Rudolph? I should check that.
Yeah, let me go see if I
can't
remember.
This is the process. All these resources are available to you people at footballdiehards.com.
Yes.
At your fingertips, just like they're at mine.
Yeah. So
Deontay Johnson's in the last 3 weeks. 19 points last week, 19 points in week 4, 14 in week 3. Otherwise, it's been single digits, including a 3-week against the Chargers. It's been a little hit or miss. I guess, I like the upside that he has. He did catch a touchdown last week from Mason Rudolph. And I think he's had another game with a touchdown. He's had touchdowns in 3 of his games. I guess that might be a little bit of the upside play for me. The Colts defense has been getting a little healthier, so that's a bit of a concern, and I'm not sure I trust Rudolph. I'm not sure I trust Sam Darnold, though, either. So maybe you just go with the matchup and play Demaryius Thomas. That seems like a safe bet given his workload, and maybe that's the higher floor.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten the last 4 weeks, Thomas has gotten 8, 10, 7, and 11 PPR points without scoring a touchdown.
Right. He's more of a floor player,
Yeah, maybe he snaps a touchdown, but, you're talking about that's a decent floor without a touchdown.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Deontay Johnson, you see the floor has been a little bit lower without the touchdown scoring. So I'd probably go in that direction and not feel great about either of them. That would be about where I'm at.
That sounds good. That's all the questions I've got right now.
All right. I think that's all the questions I've got. So we'll wrap it up. It's been about 30 minutes or so. I just want to say hit the Football Diehards website. We have tons of great content there for you. DFS articles from myself, Justin Lanero, Kyle Dvorak, his cash and tournament breakdowns. Got video with Kyle and Bobby Gomes, former millionaire maker from DraftKings, and they will be doing a live video also. They do one every Wednesday night, so tune in for that, 8:15 Eastern time. And then every Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern time, they crank up another one, tweak their lineups, help you with any questions you have. So jump in on that. You'll find it on the FF Diehards Twitter feed or on the website. You'll also find, of course, a ongoing series of news updates throughout to go with the other content and some great articles, free agent articles early in the week. Then we focus more on the lineups as the week go through. Rankings from the staff, from Kyle, Gary Davenport's IDP tip sheet, if you like playing the individual defensive player game. Of course, you can listen to Football Diehards on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Saturday night, we're on the NFL channel. Mike Dempsey and myself, Football Diehards on SiriusXM NFL 88 from 8 to 11 p.m. And you can catch me on the pregame show on Sirius with Jeff Mans from 11 to 1. And,
I got one other thing to add, too, when you get ready. I apologize.
Oh, the new tool.
We have a new tool. We got a new tool. It's a free agent tool where you can link all your teams from ESPN, NFL, Fantasy, Yahoo, CBS Sports, Sleeper app. You link your teams in all across all those platforms, and then you can search for a free agent, and it'll tell you who's available and who's available, and if they're taken, it tells you which team is taking them. So if you want to work a trade or whatnot, so you just go to tools on the website, and it's the first one, free agent tool. And if you got any questions, just let us know. And you got to be a subscriber. But now we have second half subscription. So if you go to the order page, it's only $7 for the rest of the year, and you can use everything, including that tool.
And that's a ton of content every single week, including for you DFS players. If you're season-long teams or kind of falling by the wayside, jump into the DFS. It's a ton of fun. I enjoy it immensely. I'm Bob Harris, senior editor. This is Emil Kadlec, head cook and chief bottle washer and all those things, and the tool maker as well, I might add.
The tool maker.
And
yeah, I like that. That sounds good.
And well, thank you very much. And we'll be back here every Friday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll take as many questions as we can, and hopefully we start getting more as we go along. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks.
Beautiful.
Guys.